I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9 to the Sky. So today's episode is honestly going to be a mismatch of a lot of different things, because I am going to be slowly but surely working on the completion of the ATM Star. And from the looks of it here, you can see there's a lot of weird on and in things that we're going to have to do. One of those things, for example, is making sure we have enough antimatter, which we already do. But in that same process, we're actually going to need to make an ultimate induction provider. All of this is seemingly easy enough. However, we are going to need a lithium dust. And I haven't set up the production of lithium dust yet, but that is going to get solved right now. Outside of that, we're also going to be working on getting the inactive dragon egg. To be able to do this, we have to dive a little bit into productive bees today. Everything else, for the most part, seems pretty straightforward, and most of the things are crafting recipes, outside from making a precision mechanism, which is not that hard to make, and something that we can kind of really skip over for the most part. Everything else, like I said, is sort of crafting related. Now, we are going to have to fight a boss from Ars Nouveau, but that's kind of like child's play. It's very, very simple to do that, especially at this point with the swords and stuff we have. Now, we are also going to need to set up the awakened things from Mystical Agriculture, but at this point, we have all of the infrastructure to do that as well. And things, for example, like the flight module, just require a little bit of sort of mob spawner magic to be able to get, for example, gas that you need to fill up a syringe with. So now let's jump back into the lithium. Now, I'm going to be able to make this pretty darn quick. So the way that these structures are built is you're going to need a 2x2 in the center, and then we surround it on the outside of the entire block. And I think these can go up to 18 blocks tall. So you can make them pretty tall. In my case, I'm not super worried about making them very, very tall. I just want to be able to power them. You can use the sun, but as you can tell, we don't have a sun at the moment. So what I'm going to do instead is use resistive heaters for these. Oh yeah, and did I mention that I'm going to need 2 of them? Because we're going to be sending water to one, and then we're going to send the water that gets turned into brine into this one, which will then turn into lithium. Now, in order for these to fully function and work, we're going to need some ports, and also it's going to need its controller. So I like to place the controllers in here, and we can place them in on the front just like this, and you'll notice that it does form the multi-block, but we need an input and we also need a way to transfer from one to the other. So that's where I'm going to place right here. I'm going to place an evaporation port. And so now we have a port that we can send the fluids from one location to another. And then over here is going to be our initial input fluid. Now this side is where I want to output things. And so I'll also output on this side just to make it pretty straightforward and easy to understand. Now, typically you would use the sun, and you could use some solar panels on these to be able to passively generate the heat, but I'm going to be accelerating these to make them go incredibly fast, a lot quicker, and we are going to need a resistive heater for this. But a resistive heater is only going to work if we actively have our ports. We need thermal ports in order to be able to do this. So the same ports that we're sending these, the valves, we're also going to need it for our heaters. So to be able to place a resistive heater down here, bam, these are now connected. And we'll notice that the heat already starts to go up just from having it on here, and it's spinning a little bit of the power that we currently have. But what I can do is on the back, I can increase this power and set it to whatever I want. So if I want to send 400 RF per tick to this, I can, and that's going to start to increase that heat. So with the heat increasing, we can adjust this to a comfortable level, and both sides here should be able to receive heat from the one resistive heater. So now to get this party started, we just need to send water into this. And so I can use my configurator on a sink to start sending this an unlimited amount of water. Notice this is producing brine. So what I want to do is then place this here and set this to extract the brine. That's going to then send the brine into this one. And out here, we are going to be producing lithium. And of course, we can make this faster by getting this up to its max temperature. And that's basically it for producing lithium. Now, we do need to process this into some machines. And the way that we can do that is we can send this into a rotary condensator and then send it into a crystallizer. So this is just going to pipe that out into this machine. And then with a couple of gates, we should be able to get these machines producing. So right now we'll see this isn't configured correctly. So this should be a liquid, and we're using pipes. So underneath the fluids tab, make sure the input is set up. And then we need to flip this into taking the liquid and then expelling it into a gas, which is going to go over into this machine. So we definitely need to go to the gas tab, and we need to make sure that we're outputting over on this side into this machine. And there we go. So now we have lithium being produced. I just need to speed up these machines and then have it output into a barrel, and we now have unlimited lithium production started. I probably should have started this a long time ago, as it would have helped speed up the process of crafting those power storages. So now with the lithium production done, oh boy, we get to dive into a little bit of the bees, but I don't think it's going to be as difficult to get into as you may think. See, the only thing we need from bees is actually this inactive dragon egg. And this comes from the draconic chunks, but you can actually get draconic chunks through the ender bees, I do believe, or draconic bees, I think. So it comes from the draconic bees, but there is a special hive from productive bees that lets you kind of get started with that a bit quicker. And that's going to be through the draconic egg hive, which just requires a dragon egg and a beehive. And we can actually get beehives kind of easy without actually needing any bees. And that's because we can make honey by breaking down wool and sugar into its base components and then using a combiner to combine those things together. I know it sounds kind of wild, but you can. We just need sucrose and triglycerides, and we can get triglyceride from wool. And of course, sucrose you can actually get directly from sugar inside of a dissolver. And so all we need to do is combine those two things and we start producing honeycombs. So no need to go through any sort of weirdness when it comes to, for example, like trying to grow a tree. You don't have to worry about any of that. So now we should be able to produce the dragon egg hive, which should allow us to produce this recipe. Now we're also going to need obsidian, and that's because to be able to spawn the egg, we're going to need some obsidian and a diamond sword. So this is going to allow us to sort of forgo a lot of the productive bees stuff, which, don't get me wrong, productive bees is fun, but it's not super duper required in this pack. And I mean, I guess it could be very, very powerful. Like you could definitely get the bees up and running and producing a ton of resources for you. But in this particular setup, I just need it specifically for that inactive dragon egg. Now, as far as actually capturing these bees, I do have the sturdy bee cage, which is going to be nice. I think I got this via a quest or something like that. But that is going to be nice. Outside of that, you can definitely use like a mob yoinker as well. But we need to get this bee summoned in. And so you need to be in the inn for this. And I'm just going to right click it with a bunch of these dragon breath bottles. And you can see the timer is going down there. And I just use that until the timer is completely down. You can use the time of the bottle as well. And that produces a draconic bee. So there we go. So now I should be able to place my egg down. And if I right click this onto this hive, shift right click, it will technically link the bee, or it should be linked into this hive. And notice that there is a bottle here, so we should be able to also receive honey. But what I kind of want to do is enclose this a little bit. Now, this guy is technically active here, and I can leave it. You can see it just went into the hive, and it had some honey on it. So we definitely want to get up to 3 of these in this hive, and this is going to sort of jumpstart that production. And you can accelerate this a little bit, and that'll allow it to go in and out much faster. Now I've built glass around here, and we already have 3 combs now in here just from it going in once. So once I get at least 3 of these bees up and running, this is going to be going a bit faster. And then we just need to process those combs down. And now remember those time torches from last episode? Well, we can place them down on this hive, just don't place it on the front of the hive. And that should allow this to go faster. And I believe that this is the front of the hive. And you can also, if they all go in at once, you can accelerate this and they will definitely pop out of here. Well, given that I didn't block up the front of this, I don't remember which side's the front. Oh, and interesting, it doesn't look like this actually gives me honey. It looks like it's probably going to give me more dragon's breath. Now, I also want to get at least 1 regular bee set up so that way I can get some bottles of honey, because there's no other way from the looks of it to get bottles of honey outside of this. So I should be able to do it this method by going ahead and summoning a bee. And since we already have a beehive, that's going to make that kind of easy. But whenever you do this and make a recipe like this in the summoner, you are going to have to specify a item as an output. Otherwise, you can't make the pattern. So I should be able to put this in here. And whenever we do craft this bee, the bee is going to show up. I can catch it in a sturdy cage, for example. So let's go ahead and do the campfire. And when I auto-craft this campfire, it should send all of the required ingredients. It looks like grass is the one thing we don't have. Oh, goodness. There we go. That should now be solved. And so now, if we go camp, I can go ahead and craft this. Missing grass. Campfire. Craft. Perfect. And that should summon a bee. There we go. Perfect. And then we just need to make sure we go in here and we just cancel this craft that won't ever complete. And so now I have a bee, and this is also how we can summon other mobs from the altar. So now, just like any other hive, I should be able to shift right click the bee on here, and there we go. The bee is now ready to go. I have a campfire underneath it and should be able to harvest from the back as soon as it starts to produce some honey. And so it starts. I should be able to now get my honey rolling. And I need to get enough to be able to make the seed. And that will make getting through productive bees a lot easier. Another thing that'll make this go a little bit faster, I think, is swapping this out for a hive hopper. And the hive hopper will collect honey and also combs from this hive. So after accelerating the beehive a little bit, this now has enough honey in it. So I should be able to grab, for example, a full bucket of honey. Actually, you know what? We can just use bottles, right? You think you can just interact with this with bottles? Yes. So there we go. So now I have enough bottles of honey in order to make the seeds. And these seeds are incredibly powerful for productive bees. The reason this is going to be so powerful is because we can now auto-craft all of the individual components needed to allow us to accelerate the ticks of our bees. And all of this is going to allow us to put our time in the bottle to use. And this can all be done with a simple advanced hive, a beehive, and an expansion box. So in this particular setup, I have my beehive here, and then I have my expansion box that goes on top. And this gives us a nice large interface where we can put 5 bees in here. But what really makes this powerful is being able to make the upgrade simulator. This allows our bees to stay inside the hive, and it's honestly pretty cheap to make. You just need to make the honey treats, which is why we had to get those seeds up and running. And then, to be able to get this to work with our draconic bees, we place a feeding slab not in front of the hive, but underneath 1 block away, and then we're going to put a draconic egg in here. And now, I just need to use my bee casings, and we should be able to actually make regular cages now. So these regular bee cages should be able to be produced like this. And yeah, we can move over all 3 of our bees. No longer do these poor fellas have to stay inside of the end all by themselves. Even though they did produce quite a few combs, it's no longer needed anymore. Yeah, and I'm also going to spawn 2 more of these bees in. Now all I have to do is simply get my bees in here by placing them in like this. Now the only ones that will stay are the sturdies. The regular bee cages will get deleted. But now that they're all in like this, I can now ramp this bad boy up, and that is going to just start passively producing these draconic combs for us because of the acceleration. It's honestly insane. And then we can just process our combs. So we can use a powered centrifuge, and I'm just going to get it powered from the back, and we'll take all of these combs right here, and they're just going to get processed inside here. And yet again, you can accelerate this. There's only a small chance of getting this draconium dust. I believe it's like a 20% chance or something like that, 30% chance from the comb. So it is going to take quite a few of these, as we actually need the chunks in order to make the inactive dragon egg. So yeah, it's just a matter of doing this little process right here to get that one thing that we need. And so that didn't take very long. However, it did take a lot of time off of my time in the bottle. Yeah, like several hours, because each time you go up to the 256, I believe it removes an entire hour off of your time in the bottle. So that was quite a bit, but we now have enough to completely make the inactive dragon egg, because we only needed 8 of these in order to do that. And voila, inactive dragon egg, which is the only other thing that I was like, man, that is going to be a pain to make. That is right here. And it gives us enough to make another one. But honestly, if I was going to be making more, I would just place in some production upgrades in this bad boy and this will just produce blocks of those materials that can also be processed this same way. So once you have a little bit of these draconic chunks, making those production upgrades is definitely worth it. And while bees do take up a lot of space, they can be insanely powerful, and if not more powerful than the actual mystical agriculture seeds in resource production. It's just really, if you go one, you might as well decide to stay with one, for example, making seeds in my case. And if you went with bees, you're probably going to be making more bee stuff than you are going to be producing the seeds. Now, I know I didn't cover a lot of bees or productive bees in this pack, but there's actually a lot of exclusive things that you can only get through bees if you wanted to automate them. So they're 100% worth checking out. And in all the mods 9, when I played through that, I definitely utilized bees a lot, especially for blood magic and many other things. So now with that out of the way, remember the thing we just set up? Oh yeah, the lithium dust. Well, I went ahead and drug all of that, or most of it, into my system. And now I can actually make the provider. So just one provider, by the way, is going to require 256 lithium. So we're going to need 512 of them to make 2. And we're going to need 2 of them crafted ultimately to be able to make the gravitation modulation unit, which is probably one of, if not the most complicated item to craft, because you do need the antimatter pellets, which we've gone through several episodes of just to be able to get. So we have antimatter, which required a fission reactor, fissile fuel, and all kinds of wildness in order to actually work. Oh, and by the way, whenever I got an antimatter pellet, it just gave me 3 from the quest. So that's kind of nice of them. Now, some other nice things that we're going to need is a wither builder. And unfortunately, I am pulling soul sand out of my system too fast. So this is one that I am going to have to hand do. Well, looks like I got lucky there. But there we go. So now I have a wither builder, and that's one of the other things that are down the line. And it's funny because I technically need dry rubber. Yeah, I think this was a quest that was changed. There we go. Which I do have all of that automated. Some other quick and easy things to make, for example, are the wireless router. Like, that is kind of easy. That is going to be XNet. And we actually didn't touch into XNet really any, but all of this is, it's a very robust and very cool item routing mod. And I've used it in the past several times, and it's pretty darn neat. These advanced connectors can access any side of a block, much like I showed Laser.io can do, but everything is configured through one controller. So you can have a bunch of things connected up to this one controller via these pipes, and you can actually control all of those blocks individually with the controller. And you know what? Now that I think about it, it's actually very much like Super Factory Manager, just without the coding. Now, technically, it also wants me to make a vibrant capacitor bank, in which I've already done, but to be able to complete the prerequisite, I have to have some vibrant alloy, which is super easy for me to make. We have all of that stuff automated already. And there we go. And there's a capacitor bank, and it gives you another one in return. And another interesting one we're going to need is we're going to need a block of Deorum. So Deorum is very simple for us to craft. And there we go. There's all of the materials in order to make that. And same also goes for the witherless rose. Believe it or not, we have or should have all of the things in order to make this as well. Like, this is a very cool item preventing the wither effect from ever bothering you. But yeah, like, we have all of the ingredients for this. It's just kind of awesome that all of our stuff that we've done has sort of worked its way here. I don't have the alchemy catalyst, so hey, there's something. I believe it or not, I don't have a rose bush. We could just buy it from a market though. You know what? That's probably the easiest way to do that instead of going through the Botania route. Even though, I mean, the Botania route allows us to convert a bunch of items. But I do have my market over here. And rose? Very nice. So yes, there we go. So now I have the rose required, and just witherless rose is all we need. Combine that together, and we now have one of the other items required for this process. And we get a hunter's handgun from this. Very nice. Nothing like having a brandishing a gun in the Minecraft video. And I love how his tooltip says, "For great justice." Oh no. Now, some other quick crafts are going to be the high density power. Now, you have an option between going with thermal or mechanism in this route. But the mechanism one for me, I think, is going to be much quicker. And so we do need all of these little individual components, but everything here is super auto craftable. And speaking of auto craftable, all I have to do is request one now, and it's all going to get combined together and very, very quickly crafted up. And so yet again, another thing out of the way, and it looks like it wants us to make the redstone wiring for this as like a prerequisite, as if I wouldn't just auto craft this thing. Holy smokes. There we go. So perfect. That's the only other thing needed in that regard. Fun fact, I don't think I've ever used the advanced generators mod to actually generate power, oddly enough. And some other easy ones to craft is going to be the Nether Star generator. And this does require, well, my goofy self. For some reason, because I have a craft, it doesn't use Nether Stars by itself. It instead wants to use Dark Nether Stars. It's not a huge deal, but I will go ahead and get that crafted up. That happened almost instantaneously. That was kind of wild. And we also need an Ender generator as well. So in that list, and that instantly gets produced. And some other things on the list that I honestly haven't crafted yet is going to be making the Nether seeds and, the Nether Star seeds and also the Dragon seeds. Those are two that I didn't actually make prior. So there's the Nether Star seeds. And last but not least, we should have that one finished. And there's the Dragon seeds, all of which are required inside of this. We get some Insanium farmland, and that is all used inside of the dimensional seed. And then we have the lovely, like, random thermal components that we need. And I'm assuming this was set up to essentially kind of make sure that you had crafted all of those. So like the Twinite and so on and so forth. And interestingly enough, I actually didn't have the Twinite automated. I guess it's not used in the recipes that I was needing for the max thermal upgrades. And there we go. Thermal ingots all complete. I have all of the base thermals, and I can of course auto craft them upon demand as well, which is very nice. And we get a lapidary dynamo from that. Now, something I completely missed for making the Deorum block, we actually get an internal stella, which is kind of wild, allowing us to make almost anything unbreakable. Wow. And without even setting up any of the infrastructure in order to actually do this. I'm definitely saving that. Now, since we're on course for crafting all of these things that are required, at least all of the major things that are required, we can go ahead and craft, for example, the Nitro player transmitter. Now, this does require you to have a aerial pearl that does have a zombie in it. So I just grabbed my zombie. I'm crafting that all up. And then after that craft has completed, I also need to have, I think it is 2 charged nitro batteries. These, I believe, need to be fully charged, or maybe they actually don't. Let's see. These are used in the device. Yes, they do need to be fully charged, but that should be honestly quite easy. We just need to keep them inside of our hotbar here and just let them charge up. And they're just going to charge up simply from our player charger. Just want to make sure that on your player charger, though, you have the bypass limit selected, and now they will charge up much faster at the max transfer limit of this, which is going to be always limited at, unfortunately, 2 million FE per tick. While we're waiting for those to charge up, there's our player transmitter as well. And hopefully it having power in it isn't going to affect anything, because as soon as I put it in my hotbar, it just starts charging. And some other interesting parts of this section right here is going to be making the Ring of Arcana and also the Swiftwolf Rendingale. Now, the Rendingale is a great way to get some basic flight, and I should be able to craft that all up. And I think all of the stuff is just being generated down here, which is kind of cool. And there we go, that ring generated. But that ring is actually used inside of the Ring of Arcana. So whenever I craft this ring up, it's going to actually consume that Swiftwolf. So I am going to need to request another one after that craft, and then we'll be able to actually get this whole thing up and running. Now, the only other thing that's absolutely wild to craft is the Kleinstar Omega. Whenever you go to craft this, it is a very, like, just wild process that is required in order to make this. And honestly, I think it's easier to do it by hand because the crafting recipe will sometimes, like, mess up. And you see here that I'll have to like go through the process of combining all of these together. So yeah, you're going to have to, like, you can get the autocraft to work like somewhat, but for some reason it freezes whenever you go to craft the max tier, and then you'll have to cancel the craft. But there we go. So now we have the Kleinstar Omega, which is just a very expensive thing to craft, by the way. And it looks like we get some unobtainium and another Swiftwolf Renegale, which is nice. I mean, technically we have flight from other means, but this is actually a great way to fly so long as you have some sort of Klein star in your inventory with EMC. Now there's also the Sentient Ender thing, which is going to require a soul vial that has a witch in it. And getting a witch is honestly simpler than you might think. If you have a mob spawner set up, you probably already have a witch. You just kind of have to wait for one to spawn. And in my case, I have mine going over to my blood magic setup. So I just simply have to turn on my mob spawner. And yeah, a witch will eventually end up in here. And for example, right there is a witch. And that's perfect. And this should allow us to make that Sentient Ender that we're going to need. However, there is one other requirement, and that is that we need to be in the end and we need to use an Ender, and we need to kill Enderman with the Ender, and it will give us a chance of actually getting an Enderman skull. So that is going to be one of the only other weird things that I have to do. And if I had an exclusive like Enderman farm, we could definitely automate this with the sword. But I think just going around killing them, yeah, we will have a chance of getting an Enderman head. And that right there was just a little bit of old school Ender.io knowledge. So I should be able to take the pattern and get that bad boy in there, get the skull set up, and now I should be able to craft a resonant Ender. That'll send all of the ingredients, and then that gets sent right back out, and perfect. So then we need to take this and combine it inside of our soul binder. So all of this infrastructure, perfect that we have it, including our XP going into it, and we just have to wait. And there it goes. We now have the Sentient Ender. Oh boy, even more steps in actually creating this star. Now we can actually go back to the gravitation modulation unit, and I now should be able to combine all of the components together from that, and that should now be completely crafted, or at least it should. I think. Grav. There it is. Yep. And so that is now also completed. Now, some other little things that we can do is we can take, for example, a singularity, and we can take a piece of TNT and a redstone torch, and we should be able to now place this down and drop this in, and we also need ender dust, I do believe. So we toss down some ender dust and we toss down the singularity, and between those two things, so long as they're together, and we activate tiny TNT, that should split the singularity into its tiny components. And there we go. So now we have two quantum entangled singularities. And nice, we get a 64K storage for that. That's actually not too bad. Now the 256 million mega storage component is honestly wild. So if we go 256, I have all of the crafting ingredients ready to go for this. We just simply need to craft it. And whenever I go to craft this, it is going to take some time. But that's basically it. It's going to take about 20 minutes in order for this thing to fully craft up. But I mean, 20 minutes to craft this up is not too bad, considering that my only stack is this thing right here that is doing all of the crafting for that. And so it is done crafting after a little bit of time, and I decided to go ahead and add some time torches onto it to accelerate it even faster. These don't accelerate like an insanely fast amount, but they do, it is enough. It is definitely viewable. For example, like a 256K, I typically do craft these. And so if I'm going to craft two more, for example, it does feel like it's a bit more significant in the fact that it just seems like it crafts things a lot faster. But here we go. Here's the 256 million storage component. Yeah, that is a major milestone right there in crafting that. Now, the other thing we need is a terminal. So there's also our 2Ks. So we also need a wireless terminal, and that is also required in the steps. Another thing that is honestly very easy to craft, and you just have to combine two of these together inside of your craft. And there we go. You have the universal. Very, very nice. What a wild thing to have to craft, honestly. And if I was making more than one star, I would definitely have this set up, or multiple of these set up inside the world, and probably have individual setups just making sure it's always processing circuits of each tier. That way, whenever you go to craft the star, for example, and craft 18 of them, which you would need in order to technically make the ATM B, which is, it doesn't have a use at the moment. So like the B doesn't actually give you star shards or anything like that, or it gives you star shards, but they don't have a use. then yeah, that you would just be able to just immediately craft everything all together, which would be insanely fast, just way faster than currently than what we're doing. Now, there are still several more things that we actually need to craft up that are going to require a little bit more time. One of them being the pulsating black hole. This has its own sort of progression that we're going to have to go through. Thankfully, I do have most of the things already done, which is fantastic, but we are going to have to go through the process of how we're going to get them to this compressed stage. And that is going to definitely take some time. But some of the other things we're going to be worrying about next episode is, for example, getting the summon in over here. It's going to be dealing with a lot of mobs and a lot of summoning of the mobs and killing of the mobs. We're going to have to take on the Wilden. We're also going to need something that isn't actually shown right here, but is required, I do believe. And that is going to be the fact that I think we need a piglich. So we are going to need a piglich, I do believe. And then we also need to do the Awakened Supremium and so on and so forth. There are still things that are not actually in this list here that we do still need for the star. And by the way, the thing for the piglich is going to require the piglich heart that you see right here, which is a part of the dragon soul. And we're also going to have to go after some gas because we're going to need to make a flight module from RF tools. But all of that is honestly not too bad, and we are super, super close to actually completing this pack. And I hope you guys have enjoyed thus far. So if you're looking forward to the end of this pack, and you're looking forward to, of course, the completion of the Ultimate Star, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. And with that being said, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going out to Winter. Thank you so much for your amazing support by choosing to support me over on the Discord and by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. I thank you guys all so very much. I do appreciate it. If you haven't followed me over on Twitch, be sure to do so. You can find everything linked down in the description below. Also, join the Discord as well. I'd love to have you over there. I do hang out in the chat all the time, and I would love to interact with a lot of you guys if that's something you're into. And of course, guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye!